Welcome back to Aggie Pride, a UC Davis football podcast where we highlight the people, stories, and moments that define Aggie football. Today's episode is something special. We're joined by a group of former UC Davis football players who didn't just make their mark on the field. They went on to become doctors, surgeons, and leaders in their respective fields. This is the story of balancing elite athletics with elite academics and how Davis created a space where both could thrive. If you haven't already, make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you're a true Aggie fan, check out our subscriber-only bonus episodes. We've got 5 that are live right now with more on the way. It's just $5 a month on Spotify to become a subscriber and get access to those episodes. The link is in the show notes. Let's get into it. Here's our roundtable conversation with some of the most inspiring alumni to come through this program. This episode is sponsored by the Larison real estate team, Bob and Jan Larison. You already know the name. They've been incredible supporters of UC Davis football, this podcast, and of course, they're Land's parents, now cheering him on as he suits up for the New England Patriots. Off the field, Bob and Jan are one of the top real estate teams in the region, helping folks buy and sell across Idaho and Eastern Oregon. Whether it's a home, land, or investment property, they bring experience, hustle, and heart to every deal. So if you're looking to make a move or just want honest guidance, check out LarisonTeam.com or follow them on Instagram at Larison Real Estate. Huge thanks to Bob and Jan for backing Aggie Pride. We're joined by a group of former Aggie football players who didn't just excel on the field. They went on to become doctors, surgeons, and leaders in their respective fields. Some went into orthopedics, finance, internal medicine. But what unites them at Davis is the way the program shaped their journeys. So we want to give a big welcome to Bob Krieger, Eric Smith, Jim Howard, and Bob Kincade from Dwight Smith and I. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're fired up to have you, all of you. If you've listened to any episodes, we always start with the beginning of the journey. Before, Davis was on your mind, we want to hear a little bit, maybe a little bit from each of you, and you can popcorn around about what led you to UC Davis, and to put it another way, when did your journey with football begin, and what was that like, and then how that led up to you coming to UC Davis. So let's start with Eric, and then Bob Kincade, Bob Krieger, and Jim. Y'all can chime in with a bit of your journey leading up to UC Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. I actually grew up in Tuolumne County, which is just east of, the Bay Area. It's a real small rural place. And, wanted to go to college and got into Davis and, thought maybe I could try to play football there. And, was pretty excited. They actually had a freshman football team in which Chris Peterson was our head coach. I think Bob and Jim, I think maybe we played on that team. And I think Shep, who's not on this call, but he played on that team as well. So that was really just a lot of fun and just opened up my eyes to what some of the possibilities could be.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Were you like playing backyard football as a kid? Was it always football for you? Was football kind of a second thought? Was it number one, I want to play ball in college? Well, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think for, coming out of a really small place like Sonora, California, and Tuolumne County in particular, like you don't have, you don't know what your ceiling is. So yeah, I played different sports, but I was hoping I could play at Davis, and that was definitely a big part of me coming there. And there's no doubt I would have gone to other colleges, but the football fit seemed like the right one for me at my skill level. And, I'm super happy I did, because it challenged me. I mean, it was, very challenging for me to play at that level or participate at that level. But, you're around so many great people. I mean, the guys on this call are amazing. especially during the college years. So I think it elevates you on what could be out there, what life could be like.
Yeah. Let me take it over to the Bobs, Bob Kincade and Bob Krieger. Like, what was it about Davis that attracted you? Was it the academic reputation? Was it the opportunity around football, or something else that made Davis the right fit? And either of you can take the mic first.
Want to go, Bob?
I'll go. Um, well, I grew up in Davis, so that was just home turf for me. And we were a football family, and I grew up going to the Aggie games at the old Toomey Field. The guys on the call remember Toomey Field, which was a great place to play. I was one of the little rascals under the bleachers causing trouble and playing tackle football and getting a broken nose and that kind of stuff. And all the Davis guys were my heroes: Ken O'Brien, Mike Morosky, Bo Eason, Mike Wise. I could name them all. Sean Austin. Loyal Minor was a phenomenal football player. I mean, I grew up going to the Aggie games, and we're a football family, and I wanted to go on. I was fortunate I could go on, and I could go other places and whatnot. I had a full ride to a D1 school, believe it or not, and I didn't even give it a second thought. I was going to Davis. I was going to play for Jim Sochor and Bob Foster, and I'd been to their football camps, and Bob Foster was a really smart guy. Him and my high school head coach, they put in the Davis defense when I was in high school at Davis High School. So I had been playing in their defense for 2 years or a year before I even got to school there. So, but it was an amazing place, and I knew I wasn't going to go on past college. I mean, for crying out loud, those guys are just another level, and I had another plan, and I wanted to go to medical school, and Davis was the best program and best school, and I never gave it a second thought. That's where I wanted to go, and it was the best decision I ever made. It was an amazing place. There's so many great things about it. Just the culture there, just the culture of success and winning, just the expectation of the professionalism, fostered by the coaches. And, you never give up when you're ahead, or never let up when you're ahead, never give up when you're behind, that kind of stuff that Jim Sochor used to preach. It was, I don't know, it was the most amazing experience of my life playing. And fortunately, I got to play I never had a couple minor injuries, but I got to play 5 years, redshirted one, played 4. And then, yeah, it was an amazing experience.
That's awesome. My story is a little different from the Bay Area. For me, I was a soccer player. Like, that was what I played growing up. That's what I excelled at. I started playing football in high school, and I liked it. And so it just became kind of the decision for me. It was either soccer or football, and I just wanted to try football more in college. I wanted to play college ball. To me, kind of like you guys, Eric and Bob, you guys said, the notoriety of the leadership and the coaching. I mean, Sochor is a legend, at Foster, and so and as I was looking for colleges, clearly the academia was it's a big factor as well. I didn't know if I was, what I wanted to do would be, I wasn't thinking I was going to be a doctor, but I knew I was interested in life sciences. I knew Davis had a great physiology program, which is a pretty rare thing. And when I was looking at colleges, this sense of community that I got from the school, not just the, college town, but from the program itself, the sense I got that the academics are, equally or more important than the sports, which, we know is why you're making that decision. So same thing though, greatest decision I could have made, because the community, because we can get on a call like this, just a few years later, and it's as if it was just a few weeks after we've seen each other last. And I literally constantly am quoting, as we were saying before, just some of the words in Foster's head that he would throw out at us, some of the banter that we said, all those sayings and quotes. I mean, they come out in stories that I tell with my staff and my clients all the time. So it's lasting forever, and a forever influence in my life and my career.
That's awesome, Bob. And Jim, want to get you in here, but real quick before we do, Brock, we might have to make a game time decision and get those quotes and sayings, those that are appropriate to say from all these guys, Bob Krieger, because like that's so cool to think about. Like, years later, as you said, a few years later, there's still these sayings that coaches and players have said that stick with you. The other thing, Bob Kincade, when you were saying your story, I was over here pinching myself because your story is my story. Like, I grew up on Miller Drive, right across from Toomey Field. I grew up going to the games. I went to Davis High School. I was under the bleachers playing tackle football, trying to get candy. So it's super cool to hear another Davis guy story from the actually growing up in Davis angle. So I appreciate you sharing that. Um, go Blue Devils and go Ags, between you and me. But Jim, want to bring you in here just to talk a little bit about your journey, your story, your relationship with football, and how that led to coming to UC Davis.
Yeah, I guess I would have said I was kind of a hopeful football player. We had a terrible senior year. Like we were just awful. We went 0-9-1. I was like the only guy on the team that had any kind of ability, and it was just brutal, right? Because we're in the same league as Left Scattis, and they would just come in and just steamroller us every year, right? It's like a regional and NorCal powerhouse. And at the time, they had like Charlie Wiedemeyer was there. He was pretty famous for having Lou Gehrig's disease and also being a coach. So he put a lot of kids in Division I schools, and they had a really nice program. But I totally held my own against them. They were like 3 or 4 guys blocking me at the same time. It was brutal, but they had to use 3 or 4 guys to block me at the same time. And so I get a call, just sort of randomly, somewhere in sort of like that December, January range, from the current linebacker coach at Davis. And he's like, hey, we seen you play. I'm like, yeah, who would see me play, right? Like we were terrible. And we've seen you play against good competition and, you play big. We'd love to see you come up here to Davis. You got good grades, all that kind of stuff. I was like, how do they know about me? I have no idea. But I go up there for a visit and I can't believe it. Like, it's just like football heaven. And, the facilities have this sort of classic feel to them. It very much feels like that Hoosiers,
Classic.
you know, like you're here for football. There's not going to be all this like flash. You're just going to have a good time, and it's really good quality football. Like, so you see like the film of the players and how they play the game. I was just like, oh my God, this is exactly where I want to be. And then I find out it's a great school. Like wasn't even thinking about it being a great school. And I get there, I love the culture. And so I sign up and I said, for sure, I'm applying, put my application in, and then I get rejected. Yeah. I call the coach and he goes, let me call you back. And so, 5 minutes later, I get this call back. He's like, okay, you're in. And he's like, you applied to an impacted major. So, like I have no idea, right? I'm like one of the only people in my family that have gone to college. And so I'm like, okay. So I show up, and it's just as billed, right? So Chris Peterson is the head coach for our JV team. We got Larry Weir as the defensive coordinator.
Larry.
They're two of the most impressive guys I've ever met in my life. The approach to football is exactly what you want. You're learning how to play the game the right way. You're getting technical advice. The drills have some, meaning and purpose. And, I go from being sort of a roughneck to actually a pretty technically skilled football player within a few months. And I was just like totally sold after that, right? And then, as I'm there, I realize, well, I just like Bob Kincade said, I'm not going to be a pro football player, but I'm pretty good at this school thing. And I really sort of dove into the books and put the hammer down when it came to the classroom. And, that really served me well. I think that the football culture served me well. I think this whole thing, they show you this film, right, about the catch, right? And you don't really know what that means up front. You sort of see this grainy film of like these 3 or 4 plays at the end of this old game. And somehow they're able to score like 3 touchdowns within like ridiculous short amount of time, right? And I remember that culture of, if you stay in it, and you have that positive mindset and you believe that you can do it, then big things happen. And that has turned out to be true throughout my entire life. That sort of mentality of, we're in it to the very end. Just keep going, keep pushing, and good things happen. So I don't know if that's my journey, but that was certainly my early experience and sort of what kind of carried through with that program.
Well, appreciate all of you guys kind of sharing different nuggets of kind of your initial journey to UC Davis. I think before we get into the transition maybe to the professional career ranks post college, there's more nuggets in there. So I guess the question, going back to Dwight's observation about the coaching staff specifically and some of the impact, and yeah, maybe a saying, but more so like the impact that they were able to have on your journey. What did it mean to be a part of the football program and have this coaching staff that supported not only you as a football player, but that academic like ambition at a high level? So I think we'll reverse order. So Eric, it's going to feel like an hour before you get to talk again, but I think we'll start with the Bay Area boys and make our way back. So Jim, let's go back to you.
So remind me the question again.
Really just how the coaching staff supported not only you as a football player, but the academic side. If you feel like there was a crossover there, and if not, I think the easier layup is, what impact did they make on your life? A specific saying or memory that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of lead by example. So, the coaches, I felt, were basically very cerebral. And so the way that you were taught football was both through this sort of calm sort of explanation and repetition of technique, and how you can use leverage to your advantage, things like that. So it was like a smart way to teach football and a smart way to play football. But then a lot of the coaches that were there, say like even just on the JV team, right? A lot of them were there finishing up their degree, but mostly not finishing up their degree, but getting their master's in something, So, and some of the guys that have been around for a long time, masters, PhDs, like these weren't dumb people. And so that example of how to be both masculine and intelligent, and also, athletic, all those things kind of came together in that program. And it was really never a question of, hey, I've got this ridiculously long lab that's going to compete with practice. I need to take a minute off. Okay, we'll just see you tomorrow. Just thanks for letting us know. That never really was a challenge. And so I think that they got that we were not there to play professional football. I think they got that we were there to develop as men and players, and had career aspirations beyond the college experience. And I think that really was just sort of ingrained into the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how at first I was really surprised. I mean, I knew it was academic and sports and together and stressing the academics. That's what we're there for. And it was kind of surprising to me how I felt like there was a leniency towards, your schooling and everything, at least initially. And then I realized, like, there's much more of a priority on, it brought in the human element. It wasn't sacrifice all for football, sacrifice all for sports. It was one piece of the experience of the culture of everything that we were kind of striving to have. Football itself was an incredible learning experience. And really, I'll tell you, I mean, the guys on this call and Shepherd, to me, it was somewhat intimidating, because you got these guys you're running around the field with, bumping heads, and then you're in a biochem class or you're in a calculus class together, and they're serious about their studies, and it kind of brings you to another level. I have a funny story. I was thinking about this. just it's the people that you're surrounded by. And so my brother was going to a junior college, and I think it was our junior year. He comes to visit us after the blue and gold scrimmage, and we all went out for pizza or something. I think Kincade, you were there, Alex Gash. There was a couple other guys. There was a couple 300-pounders there at the table, right? And we're sitting around talking about what classes we're going to be taking. Organic chemistry, biochem, advanced physics. And my brother afterwards, and this is just normal chit chat for us. And my brother says, "Bob, that was the strangest football lunch I've ever seen." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, he told me, he's like kind of through a different lens. He goes, "Are you kidding me? The conversation you guys are having, for us, it's like, are you going to have the chicken or the steak? So that resonated with me, like what a unique place that we were at and that we could have those higher level conversations. And I feel like we all lifted each other up. I know these guys here, whether you knew it or not at the time, really um, made me elevate, who I was going to be through college and recognize that, yeah, I got to focus on the academics as well. So there was a lot of impact, not just the saying, but experiences like that for me that really helped push it through, keep the discipline, throughout that experience and beyond.
Yeah, I would second what Bob and Jim said. I can remember a couple of times, hey coach, I had a makeup lab or something. I got to go to this lab. Okay, no problem. I mean, that would be unheard of a lot of places now, right? You go to some schools, they wouldn't let you they wouldn't tolerate you missing practice. You'd probably get sit out of the game or something. But that happened a couple times, and you were expected to do well in school. We had very few people flunk out of school. There were a couple, um, but it just was the culture and the type of kids that they got there. For the most part, were good students anyway, and so football does it has any kind of sport in college really forces you to prioritize your time. So there's just less time for screwing around and partying,
Big time.
which is probably a good thing. But I think all the guys on this call, I probably second what I would say. It really teaches you discipline and how to, when I went for my medical school interviews, every single place I went to, they didn't ask, first thing they asked me about was my football career. Like, well, how did you play football and, be pre-med or, study for the MCAT or all this kind of stuff? I don't know. You just did it. You didn't have time to screw around, and that was really fostered. I can't emphasize enough just the culture. It was just a culture it still is a culture of excellence. You're expected to do well, and you were supported, and nobody ever yelled at you or, why are your grades excuse me, why are your grades so bad this quarter? Or, whatever. It just, you didn't, I don't know, the guys around you lifted you up, and the coaches lifted you up, and you were just expected to perform, whether that was on the field or off the field. And that it's hard to explain, but it's the Aggie way. It's just the Aggie culture.
I, my,
Bob Foster. Well, sorry, one last thing. Jim Sochor and Bob Foster. They always used to say we were the Ivy League of the West. Our little Northern California Athletic Conference, and well, we're the Ivy League of the West. And there's a lot of truth to that, and I think that was the culture they fostered.
Yeah, I just want to jump and piggyback and emphasize something you said, Bob, because I tell people all the time, because they ask me, how did you do it? Because I know a lot of people that go to college, they're going to do a sport, they drop out of the sport halfway through the first season, and you kind of take for granted that we all, we did that and pushed it through. And I tell them, kind of like you said, you just did it, but you have to be disciplined, structured. You don't have time. You got an hour and a half to study between this and that. Like, you just have to do that. My best quarters were during the season because I was that disciplined. Actually, spring quarter was typically the most challenging. I know it is for just about everybody, um, but even more so because it didn't have that structure of football and practice and everything else around you.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo all the, thoughts that have been said so far. You know, being a student athlete, I mean, that's obvious, that's somewhat of a cliche in some, circles, but at Davis, it certainly was not. And, you know, expecting excellence on the field, but it's not just on the field. It was, it was your prep. I just couldn't get over, the playbook and really how academic we took the, whether it was pre-practice or pre-game film sessions, breaking it down, like Jim mentioned, the catch. I mean, yeah, we've seen that, all of us have seen that probably a dozen times. And I do think of it sometimes as just an amazing kind of bit of history that we came from, but it was an approach at Davis as a student athlete to be able to break down what you were doing physically, but then to expect excellence in the classroom. And Bob just said this as well. There were a lot of really smart people on the team, and that was just so evident to me. I mean, I could not get over that. I was having these classes, and again, I came from a high school. I was one of the smartest kids, small area, but on the Davis football team, I mean, I was one of many people that were interested in pre-med, interested in life sciences, and frankly, like a lot of these guys were just crushing some of the classes that I was so impressed with that, and it just elevates you along the way. So it certainly is a system that brings you up, and some of the coaches, as Jim mentioned earlier, they're just so impressive, and Chris Peterson in particular. I mean, I think we got to know him at a time when he was really young. And I've always been so impressed with just his thought process, his work ethic, his ability to communicate with people. And I've certainly enjoyed watching his career, after he left Davis and so forth. But, I mean, Bob Foster, incredible. So yeah, not a lot more that I could say that hasn't been said, and just, really a lot of gratitude to be part of that process.
It's so awesome to listen to you guys reflect, because having played in the same program but later, there's things that resonate even for me. And Brock and I played in that era where the transition from D2 to D1 was happening or just started. And now there's a new era that's been ushered in by Hawk and now Tim Plow, and it's just powerful. I think part of the beauty of the legacy of Aggie Pride is a level of continuity that's been passed down, through teams and coaches and even generations of players. So it's really powerful to hear all of your reflections. And I want to take it a little bit further for y'all, thinking back to your holistic experience as a UC Davis football player. What comes to the top, and there's probably multiple things you could say. So take a minute to think about what's the top line thing as you think about how your experience as a UC Davis football player helped prepare you for your career. Like, I've heard some things about discipline and kind of having to think about yourself as a full individual, not simply an athlete. So maybe there's some of those things, but maybe there are other even experiences that you had, on the field, off the field, that as you look back now is something that stuck with you as you advance into the career fields that you're in now. So Eric, we'll start with you and then go back around the room.
Yeah, thanks. I think I feel a little bit different just because I did play offense. And so my,
Never
I guess
liked
my
that kid,
perspective,
first of all.
I know. No
Offense,
one,
no
yeah,
good.
no
You're
one likes me at
different.
all.
You are
I'm right
different.
there with you. I'm right there with
I
you,
know.
Eric.
All these guys. I can envision myself, by the way, being tackled by each one of the guys and thinking to myself, when can I cut block all three of these different guys at different times? Like, I'm going to get them so bad. But I think, for me personally, the process was, not like a smooth process. I mean, I felt like I would show up to practice. Actually, if I remember, I was number 8 on the depth chart when I first started. I was actually a sophomore when I started on the JV team. So I look back, I'm like, what was I thinking? I have no idea. But this is just part of this, it allows you to have this resiliency, this ability to grind away. And so that's what I take from it. That's what my career is, just, that ability to grind away in, as Jim said, and really kind of keep looking forward.
Well, it's been proven athletes they do better in life for the reasons we've all already mentioned. They're more disciplined. And I found in my job, it's I I basically have a team, and it is a team atmosphere. And you just learn those things in sports, as in football the most, I think. Of course, I'm partial to football, but there's no I in team, and you got to build each other up, and you got to be a team player. And you'd be surprised at how many people in life they don't have any team skills, they don't have social skills. And I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying you learn those things in sports, and I think football is the best example of that. And that's really helped me the most, um, in my career. I think, other than helping me get in, because people are like, oh, you're applied to medical school, and you played football in college. I told you about that story, but anyway, it's the team concept, and you really learn how to get along with people. Society is so diverse now, and that's good. And you really learn how to respect other people. At the end of the day, you're just there to win a football game and have fun with your teammates, and you really don't care. And you learn a lot of that in sports, and that's really helped a lot. How to embrace other cultures, and things that you may not have grown up with, or your little bubble or whatever in Davis. And those two things have really served me well over the years.
Yeah, I can't emphasize the team enough. I mean, uh, and Eric, you mentioned like grinding it out. And, when you're football's a different sport. I know every sport, every team sport, there's a lot of ups and downs, there's challenges. You rise up together, you're battling it out you're in the trenches together. You go through, I don't know, triple days, right? In 110-degree weather. I'll never forget, we were sitting there watching the weather to see, hey, we're excited that it's cooling off to 102, you know, one, one summer camp. So,
Please
but you
back
go
up to
through this
nine.
stuff together and you just build bonds, and I found in business, the tougher things you could go through together, the stronger those bonds are and connections, the better understanding, the more loyalty you build. People recognize their roles just like it is on the field. There's so many cliches, but there's so many truths to that teamwork mentality. Everybody carrying their role. In football, 11 guys are all have 11 different responsibilities. So you got to worry about your one responsibility. So and you got to rely on 10 others to do theirs. And that's the same thing with the team in life. I The other thing for me, and not just a team, I struggled because it is so cerebral. I'll never forget when I saw, in high school, linebacker was flow left, flow right, drop back for pass, pretty much. And it took me a couple years before I felt comfortable with the system and I wasn't thinking so much. And I'll never forget a time in practice where I had contain on the end. I think it was 13 free and this and that. And Foster's like, Krieger, what are you doing? I'm like, what are you responsible for? What? And I was like, well, I don't know. We had this, and I was afraid that I was going to give the wrong answer. He's like, what are you talking about? Tackle the guy with the ball. Like, keep it simple, stupid. And that so much in life is so true. We could forget that, right? We create all these things. We're in very complicated businesses and careers and professions. And, at the end of the day, just keeping things simple and reflecting like, what is it you're trying to accomplish? And, just get it in as straight and narrow as you can. So that to me was a big thing for, my life adventure.
Yeah, so I guess I would echo all those sentiments. The maybe a couple additional things. I think um for me, some of the most valuable experiences I got out of this was um that I didn't have to fit a stereotype. I think that there are more than a few times that um, as a big thick necked dude, the assumption was knucklehead, right? And that has both served me well and
The triangle, Jimmy. You had the triangle.
yeah, it's musclehead. Um, the but like I think it. I remember thinking about guys like Bob Krieger actually, who would go off and play a saxophone near the creek because the acoustics were so good. And I was like, oh shoot, I wish I'd never given up my instrument. Um, I remember hanging out with guys like Bob Kincade and just being so impressed by how he approached things. And then just sort of realizing that, the coaches that we had, the people that we were around, they weren't limited by their appearance and the expectations of the people around them, but what you basically wanted to do with yourself. And so that idea of being a Renaissance man really sort of stuck with me. And that was very much a Davis thing, that you could be multi-talented. Our talent shows hilarious, but also, some of I was just always blown away. There was always some musical section, and a group of guys would just form a band and like put together this really good performance. So I think, when you see these like, I don't know, shows about athletes, there's always these stereotypes about what they're like. And, fine, that's a trope and you're doing it for entertainment. But I don't really like those shows because they don't really reflect the people that I knew. They don't really reflect the person that I am and the abilities that I have. And I remember that being one of those things is just like, don't let yourself get stereotyped by your appearance. And I'm mindful of that for other people because of that it's not, what you look like, it's who you are that matters. So I would say that's one thing that I've taken away. The ability to sort of frame shift and compartmentalize. So I don't know if you guys remember this. By the time I was a senior, I got into working as an EMT in Sacramento. And so I was basically working part-time as an EMT, playing football, majoring in biochem, working, 24-hour shifts on a Sunday after we'd played football on Saturday night, missing game film Sunday. And I was like, where's Howard? And he was off working. Having to wake myself up, go to class the next day, and then sort of recharge myself and become a person again after that long shift. But, as an intensivist, I mean, imagine how valuable that is, because I can do crazy, unbelievable things. I'm doing CPR 1 minute, I'm putting in lines, I got blood spurting out at me, I'm controlling the crowd, and then I shift and I'm off teaching. And then I shift, and then I'm doing volunteer work. And then I shift and I worked as a school board trustee during COVID. And then I shift and I go home and I'm a parent. And then I shift and I go home and I'm a husband, So those abilities to just sort of chase your interests and then also compartmentalize and shift has really served me well in ways that I can't describe. So I don't know. I think that everything that was said before that, totally true. Couldn't agree more. But those are a couple of little nuggets, I think, that sort of stuck with me.
Man, this is rich. This is like, Dwight and I are just coming from our days, putting our kids down as quick as we can, trying to get our internet to work, walking into this virtual room with 4 men we've never met. And yet, the stories that we feel so connected to are rich. And I just, a few observations I feel like I just need to throw out there because there's so much happening. And, the saxophone, Dwight and I lived in the same apartment for 3 years. Actually, we bounced around. We lived in North Davis, South Davis, East Davis, West Davis. We should have freaking lived in Woodland or something random like that, but we didn't. And Dwight is very musically talented. And I have silky pipes for podcasts, but a very basic singing voice that loves to sing. And so we turned our living room, thanks to John Roby, into a music studio. We had an entire setup, and Friday nights, instead of going out at the fraternities, mainly because I was a bit shy back in the day, we would just make music together. Junior year in college, making music together. And Dwight won Aggie Idol, which was such a great experience. Great job, Dwight. Music in the trees. That's what I wanted to say. The trees apartments. And then I think also just getting to Jim, what you're talking about, like maybe stigma is a word you could use, or stereotype is a word you could use for the traditional athlete and the football athlete, specifically a lineman, and the idea that like there's depth to us, like that there's a desire for something deeper and more, like even for this podcast, to be honest. I'm really tempted because I have the sportsy side of my brain that wants to ask Bob Kincade about his Del Oro shirt and see if he's got any insider. Yep, yep. See if he's got any insider
How'd you
intel
know
on.
about that?
Because
Where'd you go to high school?
I'm a Bay Area guy, but I know every high school in the country. I'm a dork. And so I want to ask you about Caden Pinnock. Like, hey, did you watch him play as a kid there or something? You know this guy? And I bet you do. It's a small community, but I'm gonna hold that. You can answer later, and I'm just gonna finish with the last thought, which is, my father-in-law is a cardiologist, and to hear you all talk about, I would use the word maximizing your life in all these different areas, just maximizing it is just, it's something that I think is so like inspiring and encouraging for everyone. So that was my long-winded speech. I won't talk again, but I will kick it back to Jim Howard, and we'll transition to kind of close it out. I know it's getting late for Bob and Eric specifically. Couple more questions, though, if you guys want to stick around. There's an iconic photo. Flush shared it with us. It's made the rounds. I believe it even landed on a football alumni newsletter recently, of some of you, maybe all of you, in white coats holding a football. Why do you think that image resonates with so many Aggies, and what does that photo or what that photo symbolizes? What does it symbolize to you, I should say? So Jim, we'll start with you.
I mean, I can resuscitate a turnip, so if I can resuscitate a football, it's pretty good. I don't know. I remember it was just really funny and fun to take that photo. I remember we caught a little bit of hell for when it came out. There was a lot of teasing going on, but it catches us at a time in our lives where you can see like we're all full of hope and sort of the future. You can see it in our eyes, right? And it's just before the season, if I recall correctly. And I remember just being really proud to be about that group of guys. Bob and I, really close. Shep and I were roommates in med school. Krieger and I played football in the same position for I don't know how many years together. And Eric, we've been blocking each other, knocking each other down for years. And it was just like we were all pretty bonded. And also just like you can just see this like, I don't know, optimism that we all kind of shared as a group, but also the togetherness was really good.
Yeah, the togetherness. I mean, I think it like epitomized everything that we're discussing today. Diversity, us together, kind of focused on, proving that we've got, multifaceted experience and ambitions. It's interesting to me. I always felt like the imposter because I wasn't quite sure. I felt like you guys had your track. This is what you guys are doing. I know that wasn't the case. I know I talked to Eric and Jim too a number of times towards the latter part of the college and shortly thereafter. And for me, I was like not quite sure, so I always felt a little bit different, but I was proud to be part of that because I felt like there was a bond with our group. And then when we did that 5-year follow-up thing, I was like, oh shit, I'm not in medical school. I didn't go that. I'm going the investment finance route, and I felt like I was just getting my life started. So I was a little intimidated by that. And it felt a little out of place that I didn't, but I was pursuing what became important to me. And and I was fortunate to find that early on in my life because it could have taken a long time to do. So turned out not to be a medical field, obviously, but so for me but when I remember back to that, to me it symbolizes that point in my life where I had to figure out the decisions, but probably put way too much pressure on myself to do it. And even though it probably appeared that everybody else knew exactly what they're doing, I know it's not the case.
Well, I forget the reporter. Well, was it Mark Honbo? Was that his name? The reporter. I think there were a total of 2 or 3 articles over the years. He called. I interviewed me once, and we were laughing because he's like, "Yeah, I got a lot of mileage out of that picture." I think there were a couple. There were a couple other articles about it, but that was pretty rad when you think about it. I mean, most college football programs, maybe one guy will go to medical school or go to engineering school or get a master's or some sort of advanced degree or something. But we had a handful, which is pretty awesome. Then there were a lot of guys that did other stuff, that got other advanced degrees in engineering and finance or whatever. But to me, it was just really cool. It was a symbol of Davis. You had a handful of dudes were at a place that you could actually play for college football and go to medical school, be pre-med and apply to medical school and get it. So I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that picture with tremendous pride, to be part of that group. I really, it was just, I've gotten a lot of mileage out of it, and just the concept of it. And I think it's, again, the playing with. I'm just gonna call out Bob Kincade and Shepard. At the time, both of them were both finalists for the Woody Hayes Awards. Like symbolizing the absolute best of academic and athletic output. And so, for all of us that were on that team that were, taking life sciences in those areas, I mean, that's just a huge level of pride to be part of that. I think it's also, it's something that I perpetuate even now. So I have, you know, I have 3 girls. They play college sports, and so they're familiar with the fact that there's a picture of dad and with some other people that played college sports. So it becomes something you can perpetuate as well, and certainly in my family that's been the case.
There's not going to be a picture of me in a white coat, but I hope there's something that my daughter who just turned 3 can look back on and not for a good laugh, but maybe for some of that inspiration, Eric. That's powerful for me to hear as a girl dad myself. And relationships have been throughout this entire conversation. But as we get ready to wind things down and get our East Coast brothers off to whatever's next, whether that's bed or whatever you might have going, I wanted to focus back in on the relationships that you built during your time at Davis, whether it was with teammates. I mean, the guys on the call here, coaches, professors. Talk a little bit about how the relationships you built at Davis have shaped your life and your career trajectory as we get ready to close out. So we'll start with you, Eric.
Yeah, I think the relationships that I had, certainly have some of my absolute lifelong friends from Davis, and different different things outside of football. But I think for football, the relationships, they affirmed to me that what I was doing was right, was good, was solid, and I could build on that. And so those building blocks allowed me to go on to face the next challenge in life with confidence, and to know that I had the work put in up until then. So the next challenge was medical school, and as Bob was mentioning, like, you go there, you interview, and sure, all they want to do is hear about playing football and things like that, which makes you a unique candidate. And so, but then as you get into medical school and you start to have challenges, you again rely back on the relationships that you've had, the the groundedness, the solidness that you've had up to that point. And so everything just builds on itself. And Davis is certainly Davis was not there to break you down. Davis was there to build you up. And that's what I took away from that time, being a student athlete there.
Yeah, you make your best friends, and those are your formative years. You know, your young adulthood, and you make the shared sacrifice of playing football. It's kind of like being in the service. I was never in the army. I know Eric had went through the service, but you know, you just form these bonds, and you guys know what it's like. You're out. It sucks. Practice sucks, and it's shared sacrifice, and you're getting through it, and you make those friends. Some of my best friends to this day are still my college buddies, and I go back to the games. I'm an alum, you know, I support I'm a supporter, so I go back to the games and I see Coach Biggs and Coach Foster or Coach Bronze, and it's like I never left. It was like I was there a week ago. Anyway, it's just, you make it's like, it's that time of your life when you make your best friends. And that certainly was the case for me too.
Absolutely. I mean, you said, Bobby, like the formative years. I mean, that's a point in your life. You're trying to figure out your own life, right? And then in football, it's one thing to go to class with 300 people in chem, but to get thrown on the football field, so you're competing against each other, but you're competing with each other at the same time. You got to get to know each other. And like you said, Eric, like not breaking each other down, but building everybody up. And I think it's about learning how to, like, I was really shy in college. I felt like I wasn't ready for all that, but everybody around you, you can't help it. And it's about, you learn how to form those relationships. And like you said, Bob, you're in the trenches. I always correlate it to the military, even though I wasn't in it, but I think it's a pretty close comparison as far as what you go through together and the camaraderie that you build out of that. And I think being able to get thrown into the mix like that and come out with some solid relationships and realize that that's truly what life is about at the end of the day. It's not, it wasn't just about whether we won or lost or got the championship. It was about all those other things that carry on for the rest of your life that are so significant.
Yeah, I would say that first of all, I never liked these guys, and I hope I never really get affiliated with them again. No, that's not true at all. The thing I think I would miss the most about that situation is the shared culture. I can't tell you how many times I've done something where I was like, just natural, right? But everybody else is looking at me like I'm crazy. I gave a hey, all right one time during med school. I think the whole lecture hall was like, what the hell is that wrong with that guy? Shep and I were roommates in med school, and we were in each other's weddings, that kind of thing. Still good friends, still do fantasy football every year. And I think that there's not a person here that I wouldn't trust, and reach out to if I needed to. And I was just sitting down with somebody that, was like a year or two ahead of me. And we were talking, he's like, hey, I don't really remember you. And I'm like, well, you remember this skit? You remember the Tarn skit? Remember when, Matt Devine would do his like thing, I am Tarn. Remember that? That was the
Oh my
funniest thing I've
God.
ever seen. You remember going up to Nevada and somehow beating those guys when they were like, everybody was much bigger and much faster than us. I don't know. Still don't know how we did that. But those shared experiences, I really, I miss that culture. I miss the shared experiences. And, you forget how rare that is to have, that kind of bonding moment that sort of carries you forward and also lifts you up when the chips are down. Because I've certainly been in a lot of situations where the things are looking bleak, and I'm able to sort of get through those things, remembering some of the lessons I've learned when I was back there at Davis amongst you people.
Well, I think to close it out, guys, I think a new, maybe segment's the wrong word, a new way that we've like concluded episodes is by asking people with the mindset of the listeners, which are a lot of football alumni from different generations. Like analytics show all ages are listening and watching. Fans, students, parents of players, faculty, staff. What would you want to kind of impart on them? It could be advice. It could just be like a word of encouragement, but just kind of keeping in mind the audience for this last question. What would be something that you would kind of want to leave as your final thought? So, Jim, we'll start with you.
I'm torn if I go humorous or serious on this one. So many things to say.
You can do it both, and let's do both.
Oh my! Can I give a series of quotes? Um, the final thoughts that I would leave with people. I think that it's amazing. Like, it's just a short period of your time in your life. I mean, how impactful that is as you as an athlete, and then the people around you. One of the patients I was taking care of a few years back now, his mom was grew up in Davis and actually went to our games. And once I told her, like I was there at the same time that she was, and um, you know, we were able to talk about those kind of things. Not only was I able to sort of reassure her that things were going to be okay for her son, but you could see her sort of melt into that shared culture and understanding of who we were as people. And those kind of little bits and pieces, you know, um, you carry that forward into life and really can be there as somebody else's rock, and as well as somebody else's friend, and be able to, like I said before, frame shift from, goofing around to something very serious, to something that uh, allows you to be there and be somebody else's teammate for a while.
Cool. Yeah, so I don't know. Think about this. We have a lot of young people that work with us, interns and things, and they're in that career decision-making path. And based on what I reflect on this in relation to this group too, right? So, I went into finance, completely different field. I'm the doctor of money, I guess, instead, right? So that's how I would had thought about it when I got in there. But um, when I think about how I found my career, I didn't know I was going to be at this point, you know, 30 years ago. I didn't know I was going to go. I didn't even know this career really existed. And so, I always tell people, don't put so much pressure on yourself of what you're going to do. First year out of college, I was broke anyway. So, it doesn't matter really what you're doing. But my recommendation to people is just do something. Try to find your interest and start following a path. And that's pretty much what I did. I mean, I got my first job in investments so that I could earn money because I was volunteering everywhere trying to figure out if I was going to medical school or not. And it led me to this career, which I've been completely fulfilled. To me, it's the absolute perfect right thing. Led me to my life in New York and everything else. So, but it was just by doing things, people get frozen. I could tell you I was frozen for a little while in the decision-making process. So just do something, start picking a direction and go. You can always alter your direction along the way. So for me, that was I think a critical reflection about what I was able to do coming off of, the pre-med football and everything else. And I think, that program, the guys I was with here and others gave me the confidence to know that I could get thrown in anywhere and I would be able to figure it out.
Cool. Advice for fellow alum, and I don't know. Come to the games. Support the program in some way or another. If you can't come to the game, we had good attendance last year. A couple of the games we had really good attendance, but there for a long time, we had some kind of dry years, and it just breaks my heart. And it's good to see people coming back to the games and the interest again. There is a lot to Aggie Pride, and in some way or another, support the program. Either, if you can't come to the game support it financially, or do something to maintain that connection to the school and the program and whatever it is. And you mentioned Deloro. We live up here, and I always encourage our players to go to Davis. So what I would tell you is to do something to support the program.
Bobby, I'm going to just piggyback on that because I wanted to let you guys know, and it's interesting timing that you guys came up with this call. So, because I've been talking to the board and the foundation, the fundraising committee, this homecoming, I think it's October 11th, we're going to host kind of a Aggie alum on the Krieger Family Terrace at the Performance Center. So we're just having a good excuse for anybody to come that can. It's hard for us, obviously, 3,000 miles away, but we're going to be hosting an event just to for no other reason, just to get together and be involved and reignite relationships and involvement with the program.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would just completely echo those two thoughts. There's, support comes in different phases and different focuses in different times of your life. But for me right now, this has been a great time to connect, even being in Boston ever since I, have left the West Coast. It's been great for me to connect with Davis. I have so much pride with being able to do that. But as far as what do I take from this? I take, for all the prospective parents that are out there and you're thinking about sending your child to Davis, what did I get from it? I often will say Davis wasn't really super fun. Actually, medical school in New Orleans was a lot more fun for me than Davis was for undergrad. But what it taught me was it taught me how to grind, how to prioritize, how to compete. And you're just around these amazing individuals. And if you're lucky enough to be on a team like the one we were on, you get to know them and you can, you can benchmark yourself in many ways to say hey, that could be me, or, I could have that kind of a dream, or that's really interesting because, this guy's playing the saxophone, that could be me as well. So you get around these amazing individuals. So Davis is high quality people, an incredible environment. And yeah, if you're a prospective parent, send your kid to Davis. And as we've said before, if you have a chance, try to support the football program because they're doing great things.
Dwight, why don't you share a word of gratitude and then I will close us out.
You got it, Brock. Fellas, we just really appreciate the time. Sounds like we need a part 2, maybe in person on the Krieger Family Terrace. Sounds like that's the plan. There's so much that we didn't get into, but what you did offer was I know meaningful for Brock and I know it will be meaningful for the Aggie Pride podcast family. Bob Krieger, you're the sax player.
Yeah, that's me. Let's set up a jam.
Yeah, are you alto or what do you play?
Alto, tenor.
Yeah,
whatever's there.
As we close out, one of my formative Davis memories is my neighbor on Miller Drive, Gary Walton, who worked he worked in the econ department on campus, but he would go up to the parking structure across from Toomey, and he would play a sax in there because the acoustics were so good. And so when we were at practice on A Field or on the Tomb, we'd hear those dulcet notes floating across the space. But anyway, appreciate each of you, Eric, Bob, Kincade, Bob Krieger, Jim Howard. Your perspectives are diverse in and of themselves, but the bond that unites you is so clear, and I'm honored to be an Aggie with you guys. So thank you so much for the time, and look forward to hopefully getting to meet all of you in person at some point.
Yep. And I would just close it out and say what has been said many times before during this call. I mean, this has been incredible. Huge thank you to all of you for taking the time. I think it's a sacrifice knowing a small piece of the busy schedules that each of you have and the responsibilities that are on your plate day in and day out. I think you set the bar high for what it means to be successful on and off the field. And again, just thanks for repping the program the way you do. I mean, Aggie Pride, it doesn't just stop, when we're done playing ball. And so appreciate the time, and we hope that we will connect for a part 2. It feels right. But until then, go Ags.
It's great. Thanks, guys. Great seeing you all. Congratulations to everybody on your life successes so far.
Yep. And that's a wrap on today's conversation. What a powerful one it was. Huge thanks to each of our guests for sharing their journeys, their wisdom, their continued pride in being Aggies. Before we go, if you're listening, help us spread the word. Share this episode with a teammate, a current student, or anyone who believes in what Aggie football stands for. Make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and check out those subscriber-only episodes for more behind-the-scenes content. We've got more great stories coming your way, but for now, thanks for listening, and as always, go Ags.